SV Math Teach back again. This time we're going to solve a system of equations using a matrix. Now a matrix is really great for solving big systems, things with 3 or 4 or 5 rows and 3 or 4 or 5 or more variables. I have a 3 by 4 matrix here that I'm just going to start with because really the goal here is, of this video anyway, how do you set one up? And it's worth mentioning that if you take a system like this one, you should have it written in standard form. So I like the fact that this has a 4x, a negative 1y, a positive 2x equals 1. And what you're going to see is I'm going to put my coefficients right across that first row, and that represents my first equation. My second equation has no x, but 1y, 5 z's, and 20 as a constant. And my last equation is not in scientific notation. It's not in standard notation. So I'm going to add y to both sides and turn it into 2x plus y is 7. So 2, 1, 0, and 7. And that concept is how you set up a matrix. Your goal in the matrix is to have a series of, and the truth is they don't have to be diagonal, but they normally are established that they're diagonal lines. These are all ones. And then the first one here, that represents x. So x equals whatever number shows up at the end. The y column here, 1y, equals whatever number. And the z column, whatever's here, z, equals that number. And you end up getting yourself a set of numbers that are your solution to your system. You can only do a few things with systems and matrices though. You can switch any two rows around. You can multiply a row by a constant, and that constant can be negative or positive. It can be a fraction, a decimal, or a whole number. And you can add one row to another, which means you could also subtract one row from another. Now, I have an example here that I thought I would work out for you. It's partially done already, and then we're going to fill in the rest together. First and foremost, I took this system that I had as an example, and I wrote it in the way that I used before. I wrote all the coefficients down. Now, there's a procedure that I want you to follow, and I think it's going to be the easiest procedure. The procedure to follow is start with this first number on the middle left side and turn that into a 0. And the trick would be, well, how am I going to turn that number into a 0? Well, there's lots of ways, but one way is to do this. See how this first number is a 1? I'm going to multiply the entire first row by negative 2. That's going to make them all opposite of what they are and 2 times as big. And then you would have a negative 2 here, right? And then if you added that first row that's been modified to the second row and then put it in the second row position, you would get this piece right here. Now let's do something similar to do the next strategy. The next strategy is turn this number into a 0. I want to use a very similar strategy. I'm going to multiply the first row by 3. That's the opposite of negative 3. I'm going to add it to the third row and put it in the third row. Now let's keep on going. My next piece is going to be this guy. I want to turn that number into a 0 as well. I like to have a little triangle of zeros, bottom left-hand corner. If you get that triangle of zeros, you tend to be in good shape. So watch what I'm going to do. First and foremost, I'm not going to mess with the first row at all. And I'm not going to mess with the second row, although I'm going to be multiplying by it, but I'm not going to modify it in any way. I'm only going to be messing with the last row. So I'm going to make a curvy line here, and I'm going to think about what can I multiply the second row by to get it to turn into the new third row. Well, I want this number to be 0. So I need to add it. I need to figure out a way to make 5 into a 4. So I'm going to take the 5, which is row 2, and we're going to multiply by 4/5. That'll make it into a 4. If I add it to the third row, that'll make it into 0, and now I'm in business. So watch what I get. 0 times 4/5 plus 0 equals 0. Oh, we already knew that one. Let's see, the next piece, R2. So I'm going to take 5 times 4/5. That's going to become 4. 4 plus negative 4 is 0, and put it here. Let's do it again. Negative 5 times 4/5 is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 7 is going to be 3. One more time. Negative 20 times 4/5 is going to be negative, let's make sure I have this. 5 goes into negative 20 4 times. Negative 4 times 4 is negative 16. Negative 16 and 9 is 3. You want to be very, very careful you don't make a math error somewhere along the line or the whole problem falls apart. Okay, great. Now we have this little triangle down here. You want to shoot for that because now the next step is just take your third row. Look at your third row. It's almost ready to be solved. Take your third row, multiply it by 1/3 because that's the reciprocal of 3, and put it in the third row again. 0, 0, 1, 1. And now we've just answered one of the three variables. We now know that z equals 1. So I'm going to rewrite the other stuff. And let's keep going. Now the next strategy, right? So we went ahead and we kind of took care of a variety of things. I want to make this thing, I guess I'm kind of in a different color now. I had wanted to make this into a 1. Now I want to make that into a 1. So let's think about how we're going to do that. How can I make that 5 into a 1? Same strategy as I just used. I'm going to go ahead and multiply that row, the second row, by 1/5. And then put it right back in the second row. So 0, 1/5 of 5, 1/5 of -5, 1/5 of -20. And I rewrite the first and the third exactly as it was before. We're doing great. Next strategy is let's get this thing. I'm going to use zeros in orange. So let's get this thing to turn into a 0. And we're going to have a pretty easy time of that because I noticed that these are opposites. So if I just added those together, that's the second row and the third row, and I put it right where I want the 0 in the second row, I'm going to be in good shape. So add these two together and put it in the second row. Add these two together and put it in the second row. Again and again. And the first and the last haven't been modified. Now look, I have a second answer. My y value is -3. So I have 2 of my 3 variables already. Great, let's finish this thing out. Back to blue because now we're going to work on, well, I guess I'll stay with orange because we're going to work on zeros. I want that thing to be a 0. So let's think about how we're going to do that. I must be using the second row because I can't really get a 0 to turn into a 2 because I can't use addition the way I want to. So I'm going to have to use this row. So I need to use the second row, multiply it by 2. That'll make it the opposite of, and then add it to the first row and put it in the first row. So let's see. Multiply this one by 2. That's 0. 0 plus 1 is 1. Multiply this one by 2. That's 2. Add it to -2 and I get 0. That's what I wanted. Multiply this one by 2. Doesn't change it. And multiply this one by 2. I get -6. -6 plus 11 is 5. Rewrite the second and the third, and one more, and we're almost done. Let's turn that thing into a 0 at this point, and you can probably guess how we're going to do it. We're going to use this number down here. We're going to take the third row, we're going to multiply it by the opposite of what we want, -3. We're going to add it to the first row, and you guessed it, put it in the first row, and we're going to be done. So we're going to get 1, 0, this is going to become a 0, and the only one I'm really showing, if I multiply this by -3, that'll be -3. -3 plus 5 is 2. I want to be very, very careful with that. And then 0, 1, 0, -3. I'm just rewriting these last 2 rows, and I'm done. Look, my x value is 2. So x is 2. My y value is -3. And my z value is 1.